David Richard Berkowitz was born Richard David Falco on June 1, 1953, in Brooklyn, New York. David was the child of an affair between Betty Falco and Joseph Kleinman, who were both married to other people. When Betty became pregnant, her lover, Kleinman, threatened to abandon her if she kept the baby. So she put David up for adoption and listed Falco as the father. Within a few days of his birth, David was adopted by Pearl and Nathan Berkowitz of the Bronx. They were Jewish, working class, middle-aged, and childless. David had a troubled youth. He hated school and would run home every day after the final bell sounded. Although he was above average intelligence, David was hyperactive and surly, so he lost interest in school at an early age and became obsessed with petty theft, bullying his peers, and pyromania. Although David claims to have started more than 1,000 fires during his teenage years, he was never in trouble with the law prior to becoming a serial killer at the age of 23. Morbid thoughts about death and his adoption haunted David during his youth. He learned that he was adopted at the age of 5. He was told by his parents that his biological mother had died during childbirth. David grew up feeling responsible and guilty for his biological mother's death. He also had disturbing and conflicting thoughts about his biological father. David also wondered why his father had abandoned him after his mother's death. He thought that perhaps his biological father had given him up for adoption because he hated him. He became afraid of the dark and thought that his father would come and get him for killing his mother. David grew up feeling extremely lonely and longing for a sense of purpose and meaning in his life. He thought that perhaps he might find a sense of purpose by serving his country in the war with Vietnam. So he joined the US Army in 1971. He felt like he was embarking on a special mission, and it gave him a sense of pride to be in the military. Instead of sending him to Vietnam, however, the army stationed him in South Korea, which Berkowitz recalls as a boring time. After serving a self-described disastrous 3 years in South Korea, Berkowitz left the army with an honorable discharge. Ironically, he had entered the army in 1971 looking for meaning, but he left it in 1974, feeling more lonely and unfulfilled than ever before. When he returned home from the army, David became obsessed with determining his roots. He found out that his natural mother was still alive, and that he also had a sister following an exhaustive search of public records. He was shocked but excited about the prospect of finally meeting his birth family. Upon locating his mother and sister, there was a brief family reunion. After a few visits together, however, Betty Falco disclosed the details of David's illegitimate birth, which greatly disturbed him. David fell out of contact with his mother, and he drifted into a series of blue-collar jobs. He was employed full-time as a letter sorter for the US Postal Service throughout his killing rampage. The forensic anthropologist Elliot Layton, PhD, has discovered David's discovery that his birth mother was alive, and he was born out of wedlock as the primary crisis of his young life, which effectively shattered his sense of identity. Upon discovering the truth about his origin, David's feelings of guilt and shame over being responsible for his mother's death were replaced by rage over having been deceived and abandoned by his birth parents. David's rage was given directions as well as an illicit purpose through his growing interest in Satanism, which began shortly after his release from the army at the age of 21. Before long, he became obsessed with Satan and the occult. By 1975, isolation, fantasies, and paranoid illusions had progressed to be the point that David lost touch with reality. According to his own accounts, Berkowitz's killing career began on December 24, 1975, when he stabbed two women using a hunting knife. One of the women was Michelle Foreman, and the other has never been identified. In the early morning hours of July 29, 1976, 18 years old Donna Loria and 19-year-old Jody Valentin were sitting in Valentin's car when Berkowitz walked up to the car and shot at them. He fired 3 shots guns and walked away. Loria was killed instantly and Valenti survived. When Valenti was questioned by police, she stated that she did not recognize him and gave a description which fit with a statement by Loria's father, who said that he saw the same man sitting in a yellow car. Testimony by other individuals in the neighborhood stated that the yellow car had never been seen driving around the neighborhood that night. Police determined that the gun used was a .44 caliber Bulldog. On October 23, 1976, Berkowitz struck again, this time in Flushing, a community in the borough of Queens. Carl Di Nero and Rosemary Keenan were sitting in their car parked when the windows shattered. Keenan immediately started the car and drove off. It was not until they got here that they realized they had been shot at. Even though Di Nero had a bullet wound in his head, both Di Nero and Keenan survived the attack and neither saw the shooter. Police determined that the bullets were .44 caliber, but could not determine what gun they came from. Investigators did not initially draw a connection between the shooting and the previous one because they occurred in two separate Newark boroughs. Shortly after midnight on November 27, 1976, 16-year-old Donna DeMasi and 18-year-old Joanny Lomino were sitting on Lomino's porch in Bellerose, Queens. As they talked, a man approached them, dressed in military fatigues. He began to ask them for directions in a high-pitched voice before taking out a revolver and shooting at them. They both fell, injured, and the shooter ran away. Both girls survived their wounds, but Lomino was paralyzed. Police were able to determine that the bullets were from an unknown .44 caliber gun. They were also able to make composite sketches based on testimony from the girls and neighborhood witnesses. On January 30, 1977, Christine Freud and John Diel were sitting in Diel's car in Queens when the car was shot at. Diel suffered minor injuries and Friend died of injuries at the hospital. Neither victim ever saw the shooter. After this shooting, police publicly connected this case with the previous shootings. They observed that all shootings involved a .44 caliber gun, and the shooter seemed to target a young woman with long, dark hair. When the composite sketches from the various attacks were released, NYPD officials noted that they were likely searching for multiple shooters. On March 8, 1977, Columbia University student Virginia Boskerikian was shot walking home from class. She lived just one block away from fellow victim Christine. She was shot several times and eventually died of a gunshot wound to the head. In the minutes following the shooting, a neighbor who heard the shooting went outside and saw what he described as a short, husky teenage boy sprinting from the crime scene. Other neighbors reported seeing the teenager as well as a man matching Berkowitz's description in the area of the shooting. The earliest media coverage implied that the teenager was the perpetrator. Eventually, police officials determined that the teenager was a witness and not a suspect. On April 17, 1977, Alexander Isa and Valentina Suriani were in the Bronx, several blocks away from the scene of the Valenti Loria shooting. The pair were each shot twice while sitting in a car, and both died before they could talk to the police. Investigators determined that they were killed by the same suspect in the other shootings, with the same .44 caliber firearm. At the crime scene, police discovered a handwritten letter addressed to the captain of the NYPD. In this letter, Berkowitz referred to himself as the son of Sam and expressed his desire to continue his shooting sprees. With the information from the first letter and the connections between the previous shootings, investigators began to create a psychological profile for the suspect. The suspect was described as neurotic, potentially suffering from paranoid schizophrenia, and believed that he was possessed by demons. Police also tracked down every legal owner of a .44 caliber Bulldog revolver in New York City and questioned them. In addition to forensically testing the guns, they were unable to determine which was the murder weapon. Police also set up traps of undercover police officers posing as couples in parked cars in the hopes that the suspect would reveal himself. On May 30th, 1977, Jimmy Breslin, a columnist for the Daily News, received the second Son of Sam letter. It was postmarked for the same day from Englewood, New Jersey. The envelope had the words blood and family, darkness and death, absolute depravity written on the reverse side. In the letter, the Son of Sam stated that he was a reader of Breslin's column and referenced several of the past victims. He also continued to mock the New York City Police Department over its inability to solve the case. In the letter, he also asks, "What will you have for July 29th? Investigators believed that this was a warning, as July 29th would be the anniversary of the first shooting. One notable observation was that this letter seemed to be written in a more sophisticated manner than the first one. This led investigators to believe that the letter could have been written by a copycat. The letter was published about a week later and sent much of New York City into a panic. Many women opted to change their hairstyle due to Berkowitz's pattern of attacking women with long, dark hair. On June 26, 1977, the Son of Sam made another appearance in Bayside, Queens. Sal Lupo and Judy Placido were sitting in their car in the early morning hours when they were shot with 3 gunshots. They both suffered minor injuries and survived, though neither saw their attacker. However, witnesses reported seeing a tall, stocky man with dark hair fleeing the crime scene, as well as a bald man with a mustache driving in the area. Police believed that the dark man was their suspect and the blonde man was a witness. On July 31, 1977, just 2 days after the anniversary of the first shooting, Berkowitz shot again, this time in Brooklyn. Stacy Moskowitz and Robert Violante were in Violante's car, parked near a park when a man walked up to the passenger side and began shooting. Moskowitz died at the hospital and Violante suffered non-life-threatening injuries. Unlike most of the other female victims, Moskowitz did not have long or dark hair. There were several witnesses to this shooting who were able to provide descriptions of the shooter to police. One of the witnesses described that the man looked like he was wearing a wig, which could account for the varying descriptions of suspects with blonde and dark hair. Several witnesses saw a man matching Berkowitz's description, wearing a wig, driving a yellow car, without any headlights and speeding away from the crime scene. Police decided to investigate the owners of any yellow cars matching the description. David Berkowitz's car was one of those cars, but investigators initially pegged him as a witness rather than a suspect. On August 10, 1977, police searched Berkowitz's car. Inside they found a rifle, a duffel bag filled with ammunition, maps of the crime scenes, and an unsaid Son of Sam letter addressed to the Sergeant Doe of the Omega Task Force. Police decided to wait for Berkowitz to leave his apartment, hopefully with enough time to obtain a warrant. As they had searched his car without one, the warrant never arrived, but police surrounded Berkowitz when he left his apartment holding a 44 Bulldog in a paper bag. When Berkowitz was arrested, he allegedly told police, "Well, you got me. How come it took you such a long time?" When police searched Berkowitz's apartment, they found satanic graffiti drawn on the walls and diaries detailing his alleged 1.4K arsons in the New York area. When Berkowitz was taken in for questioning, he quickly confessed it to the shootings and stated that he would plead guilty. When police asked what his motivation for the killing spree was, he said that his former neighbor, Sam Carr, had a dog that was possessed by a demon which told Berkowitz to kill. Carr is the same Sam that inspired his nickname, the Son of Sam. After Berkowitz was convicted, he was sentenced to 25 years for its murder, serving time in New York's Supremax Attica Correctional Facility. In February 1979, during a press conference, he recanted his earlier claims of demonic possession, stating that they were all a hoax. Instead, he revealed that his killings were fueled by anger at the world that had rejected him, particularly by a woman. He admitted to targeting young women due to his frustration. In 1990, Berkowitz was transferred to Sullivan Correctional Facility, where he remains today. Over time, however, Berkowitz underwent a profound change. He found religion, becoming a born-again Christian. He publicly expressed deep regret for his actions, stating that his newfound faith had given him peace and a sense of redemption. His conversion was a significant aspect of his life in prison, as he sought forgiveness for the lives he had destroyed. Despite his transformation, the scars of his past remained, and he continues to serve his life sentence.